Our opening thought comes from Francois de la Rochefoucauld. I said his name right, by the way. And he writes, I'll only say it once though. He writes, "No persons are more frequently wrong than those who will not admit they are wrong." Our next reading comes from the autobiography of Malcolm X. He writes, "I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost, and as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." Our next reading is from Carl Sagan. It's appropriate that our next reading is from Carl Sagan on Father's Day because I can remember as a youth my dad making me watch every episode of Cosmos by Carl Sagan.
Amen.
At first he had to make me watch it, and then I came to really enjoy it. Carl Sagan said in his interview with Charlie Rose in 1996 these words, "Who is more humble? The scientist who looks at the universe with an open mind and accepts whatever the universe has to teach us? Or somebody who says everything in this book must be considered the literal truth and never mind the fallibility of all the human beings involved?" Our discourse this morning is on a relatively small topic, the quest for truth. I was approached this morning about how broad the topic is, about how big the topic is, and yes, it is. It is, but it's also a very important topic for us to look at, especially in this day and age when so many people think that they have possession of the absolute truth in our world. But perhaps commitment to the truth is best expressed in a realization that we as individuals, communities, cultures, political groups, and religions will never fully possess the truth. And therefore, we ought to proceed with great humility about truth claims concerning the what, the how, and the why of reality, and that which is ultimate. This is not equivalent to moral relativism. We have significant consensus that we should do no harm to others and that we should help each other flourish as persons. So being humble about the truth is not the same as moral relativism. Rather, it's an attitude of humility that allows us to appreciate truth, goodness, and beauty in our own perspectives without absolutizing them in ways that diminish the perspectives of others. As we learn more about the world, more about ourselves, and about the cosmos as a whole, our understanding of what is true changes. This is a good thing, because a lot of the things that we used to think were true are really, really wrong. We no longer think that the earth is flat. Most of us don't think that. We no longer think that the world is less than 10,000 years old or that dinosaurs went extinct because there was no room on the ark. We no longer think that the earth or even the sun is the center of the universe. We no longer think that animals are simply natural machines without thoughts or feelings, or that they should be treated merely as objects rather than as subjects of life. Our views about what is true, our understanding of reality changes. It evolves over time. And we're beginning to understand that we should not treat nature simply as a storehouse of natural resources or solely as a commodity to be bought and sold and consumed. As our knowledge evolves, we're beginning to understand that the earth is finite and that it has a finite carrying capacity that we must respect in order to sustain ourselves and the rest of life. As our knowledge evolves, we are beginning to understand that our economic systems that only focus on growth without more equitable distribution or ecological sustainability are doomed to fail at great human and environmental cost. We are beginning to understand that we cannot radically change the chemistry of our atmosphere without there being serious consequences. In a humble quest for the truth, it is inevitable that new understandings of our reality will emerge. And that is a good thing. Embracing new, more plausible, and hopefully better understandings of reality is a good thing. But it is not necessarily an easy thing to do. Change can be difficult. Sometimes we resist change, especially when it involves changes in our worldview and changes in the interpretive lenses through which we see the world and each other. It's often difficult to give up the feelings of security and stability that old ideas and old interpretive frameworks give us, even when it becomes more and more obvious that they are no longer adequate and are no longer contributing to our well-being. We humans have a tendency to cling to ways of being and doing in the world that are no longer working for us in the present, even when they pose a significant threat to a flourishing future. One of the greatest barriers to wisdom is when we listen only to the authorities from the past without looking at the world for ourselves with an open mind and without hearing from other persons' experience in the present. We sometimes allow ourselves to be trapped by the authorities of the past. There is perhaps no other area in our lives where changing our perspective is more difficult than when it comes to our religious beliefs. As the 20th century theologian Paul Tillich describes it, our religious beliefs focus on our understanding of our ultimate concern. Our ultimate concern. And it's difficult to change our views about that which concerns us in an ultimate sense. But a humble quest for the truth, however, requires that we also subject our religious beliefs, our beliefs about our ultimate concerns, to scrutiny and to critical analysis. Within Christianity, religious beliefs have been primarily based on interpretation of the Bible and Christian tradition. But it's very apparent that many historical interpretations of the Bible and Christian tradition have been wrong. Not only have they been wrong, many of them have led to extremely evil actions and consequences. Many Christians have perpetuated gender inequality based on their interpretations of the Bible and Christian tradition. Christians have justified inquisitions, torture, and executions based on their interpretations of the Bible and tradition. Christians have justified conquest, colonialism, and crusades based on their interpretations of the Bible and tradition. They've justified racism and slavery based on interpretations of the Bible and tradition. Christians have justified inequality for persons who are LGBTQ2S based on their interpretations of the Bible and tradition. Christians have also justified dominating nature and non-human life based on their interpretations of the Bible and tradition. Now, one might simply say, and coming from the Christian tradition, I might simply say that all of these interpretations are simply incorrect interpretations. And I think an extremely strong case could be made for the view that all of those interpretations are incorrect. But that being said, we need to proceed with tremendous caution when basing our actions in the world on our interpretations of the Bible and tradition or any religious framework, even when we think we are certain that we are right in our interpretations. It's likely the case that many of the Christians who have done harm to others in the past based on their interpretations of the Bible and tradition thought that their views were right also. Great humility, great care is needed when attempting to apply our interpretations of our religious traditions in practice within our religious communities and within the larger pluralistic human community of which we are all a part. Theological certainty has more often than not been a very dangerous and even deadly stance from which to engage the world. A stance of humility in relation to our theological perspectives that recognizes the fallibility of the entire human enterprise, including our religious and our theological views, could go a long ways towards preventing the misuse of religion to oppress and commit violence against other persons and the community of all creation. Many of the problematic interpretations of the Bible and Christian traditions have been perpetuated over centuries past by empires for political and economic purposes. Theological ideas that are supported by empires, by the way, they're not supported by empires because they are necessarily true. They're supported by empires because they benefit the empire in one or more ways. A humble quest for truth requires that we ask ourselves, who is benefiting from a particular interpretation of religious views? If the ones who are benefiting are the most powerful rather than the most vulnerable, then that is a problem. Our ideas about reality are hypotheses. Our ideas about reality are hypotheses and should always be open to correction and hopefully improvement, including our theological ideas. This realization is one of the strengths, I believe, of Unitarian Universalism, and it is affirmed in the fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism, which is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I close my discourse this morning with words of insight and wisdom concerning the fourth principle from Reverend Paige Getty from the UU Congregation of Columbia, Maryland, who writes this: as responsible religious seekers, we recognize that we are privileged to be free, to have resources to pursue life beyond mere survival, to continually search for truth and meaning, to exist beyond bonds of dogma and oppression, and to wrestle freely with truth and meaning as they evolve. This privilege calls us not to be isolated and self-centered, believing that our single perspective trumps all others, but rather to be humble, to be open to the great mysteries of truth and meaning that life offers. And those mysteries may speak to us through our own intuition and experience, but also through tradition, community, conflict, nature, and relationships. She continues, as a faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism makes sacred the right and responsibility to engage in this free and responsible quest as an act of religious devotion. Institutionally, we have left open the questions of what truth and meaning are, acknowledging that mindful people will, in every age, discover new insights. In response to Reverend Getty's reflections, I would simply say that for such a time as this, in which we face ongoing wars, economic injustice, a climate crisis, a global biodiversity crisis, and continued racism, sexism, and attacks on the rights of persons who are LGBTQ2S+, the world needs a humble and open pursuit of the truth and meaning. The world needs humanity to be looking for ways of being together that will lead to the well-being of all life and all human beings. A humble pursuit of the truth, wherever it may be found, might be the leaven that is needed to help the rise of wisdom required to forge a more just and sustainable path forward. And together, may we express our understanding of this truth through unrelenting grace, responsible freedom, boundless love, and justice for all. May it be so. Our parting thought comes from Marcus Aurelius from Meditations. He writes, if someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed. It is the person who continues in their self-deception and ignorance who is harmed.